Let's see, it's going to start. And I'm welcoming y'all to the first time CELT is offering a webinar on this topic. So this is our CELT eLearning webinar on effective instructor presence and facilitation of pre-designed online courses. And we are going to begin with a poll. And like all of you, I'm still adjusting to different Teams features. So I have created this poll where the answers will appear in a word cloud. So I'm going to launch this and I'm going to let the questions speak for themselves. And if everyone can type and answer these questions, each of them. So let's go ahead and get this started. It should pop up on your screen in a second. These answers are anonymous. They will appear as a word cloud, and there are 3 questions. So please answer all 3. You can press the arrow button over when you're done. The results will appear in a word cloud, but not your name. Sorry, the poll. Now I got to figure out, I'm going to close poll. I'm assuming everyone filled it out. Oh, well. Did everyone fill out the poll? Let me know if you're still filling it out.
I'm still filling it out.
Okay. Shoot. Okay, let me reopen it.
I think I got off the main page. All I can see is pictures of you guys. I mean, I can't see the questions.
Are y'all seeing the poll pop up? Can you guys let me know so that I know if Charles is different than? Oh yeah, everyone else is seeing the poll, Charles. So
okay, I see it now. What does it feel like no longer connect with? Okay.
So if maybe in the chat you can just say when you're done, that would be helpful. This is my first time doing this, so I'm gonna, I assumed it would tell me when everyone had entered their responses, but.
Yeah, I'm done.
I see the words popping on the poll now.
Oh, good. Okay, so how are you seeing those, Shay? When you click on it, the view?
The poll is still, I hit done, and then once I hit done, it's showing like that there are 4 responses to the first question and 4 to the second.
Okay, yeah, same with mine. So when you finish, then
what view are you guys on? I'm sorry, what view are you guys on to see that?
I got a notification like in the chat that Jamie had opened the poll, and then I clicked it and was able to access the poll that way. And at the top menu, there's something that says polls.
I did the poll, but now all I'm seeing is a picture of 4 of you. Now, I see Joel just popped up. So I'm just seeing the your guys' cameras. I'm not seeing any content.
Well, I'll read them out loud then, because I don't want the technology to defray us. So right now, the first question, so I'm going to go ahead and just read these out loud so that we don't have the technology defray it. But the first question was, what does it feel like to no longer connect with students in person? And the responses I'm seeing right now say not good. One says disconnected. Another says distant. Do you see any additional feelings on there, Shay, in your answer to one?
No, I don't.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we're all looking at the same one. Now I see someone says to no longer connect with students in person says involved. Okay, so that's interesting. So now the next question, what does it feel like to no longer be the sole arbiter of course design or no longer the primary delivery person for disciplinary content? Someone says not too bad. Someone says hard because I was trained as an expert in my discipline. Someone says challenging in some teaching aspects, and another person wrote perplexing. Okay. And then the third poll response, what does it feel like to have less impromptu interactions with students? Everyone wrote concerning, not good, limiting, and uncertain. Someone said efficient. That's a great point. And then another person wrote stale. Okay. So that's okay, Jill. That's okay. But I just read the responses for y'all. So I wanted to start this webinar with a space to express some of these feelings about what might be called losses when we're an instructor of a pre-designed online course. And these are real feelings and shared by many of you, although a couple people had different responses in there, like they felt actually the interaction was more efficient in many cases. That's not a loss, right? That's a gain. You know, I've heard this from colleagues when I was deciding to design this webinar and asked by the administration to design a webinar like this. A lot of faculty expressed some of these feelings to me of loss. And I think it's really important to reflect and acknowledge. So I'm going to go ahead and mute you, Charles, because you're we're hearing kind of the background. Yep, perfect. Thank you. It's important for us to reflect on these feelings as you teach a pre-designed online course, as well as it's a context that we all need to recognize here at BSU when we teach this. And I'm not going to promise that we're going to solve or make any of these feelings go away by the end of this webinar, and we actually shouldn't, right? These are real feelings and losses. But what I hope is that what we're going to discuss today will help you manage some of those frustrations. So some of you said you felt disconnected, or it made the flash, they used the phrase not good, and it concerned you. So I don't want us to sit in those feelings or sit in those experiences. So what I'm hoping today is that what you're going to learn will help you manage some of those concerns, situate them in the context of higher education, transformations in higher education, and help you redirect your energy toward evidence-based strategies for facilitating a pre-designed online course by establishing instructor presence. So again, even if you haven't felt some of those feelings, so one person had a lot more, I would say, positive responses to that poll, then you're going to get some tangible takeaways from this webinar about how to teach a pre-designed online course like ACA, Smart Path Core, or even when you have a course shell that you're copying from a faculty member. So let me now go back to my PowerPoint slide. And I seem to have lost that window as well. See, so we are all still learning how to navigate Teams. I always say that Teams is, it's like a buffet. It's like when you go to a lunch buffet, there's everything everywhere. So it can be a little hard to find where you are. So Charles, I'm with you on that. So hopefully you guys should now see my PowerPoint about the poll. And what I want to move into now is what we're going to do in this webinar. So these are my learning objectives. We kind of talked about some of the challenges and concerns and feelings around teaching a pre-designed online course. I'm going to now situate those feelings in the history of higher education Then we're going to talk about the concept of instructor presence, its benefits, and which ones students learn from the most. And then we're going to actually apply strategies for instructor presence to particular parts of your courses that you guys are teaching. So that's a lot to kind of get through today. This is a little bit more of the lecture moment of my webinar, in that I want to situate where we're at in historical transformations in higher ed. And there's a perception in higher ed that we never change, right? You probably hear that in the news, or maybe your friends or family member tell you that, oh, you faculty, you know, you guys get to do everything you've done forever the same way, you know? But actually, that's not factually true, right? The history of higher education reveals otherwise. Institutional innovation and major transformations have occurred at several junctures in history. And for example, in his book, and this is a cover of the book that I'm referring to, Alternative Universities, Speculative Design for Innovation in Higher Ed. And this was published by Johns Hopkins University Press in 2019. Historian David Staley notes how in the mid-19th century, the land-grant institution represented a distinctive shift in the landscape of higher ed that previously had been dominated by elite private colleges. Okay, similarly, and some of you have probably taught at, or you got your PhDs at land-grant institutions, but maybe you've taught at community colleges too. In the mid-20th century, we had the development of the community college system to further increase access and affordability. So those are at least two huge transformations in higher education. So that reveal how much the role of a faculty member and the way in which we teach has changed. For the purpose of today, I want to actually go further back in time to the biggest little cog in the machine here on the bottom, the research university. Staley notes in his book that the birth of the research university occurred in Europe in the 18th century. He points out, and you'll see why I'm bringing this up, okay? He points out that the creation of the research university and the corresponding role of the scholar as disciplinary expert arose because of information overload in books published since the invention of the printing press centuries earlier. So many books were printed now that one person, one scholar, could not master all the knowledge those books contained. What was the purpose of a university in an age when print reached a saturation point? He asks. As a result, Stanley says universities turned into producing researchers, scholars or professors with intellectual specialization. Furthermore, the distinction of scholars as experts in comparison to lay people occurred at this time. Stanley suggests this is still the typical concept of a scholar, of the professor in contemporary higher ed. Many of us here today would likely even argue at regional comprehensive state universities like BSU, this is who we are. So Stanley concludes by saying higher ed has gone through a number of major transformations, and crucially, those transformations transform the role of the faculty member, not only students, right? We often say higher ed is a time of transformation for students. What Stanley is arguing is that higher ed transforms us. We have been shaped by higher education. So his argument is that the research university shaped us to become experts. There was no such thing as an academic, as an expert until the development of the research university. There wasn't the notion of a discipline in the way in which we know it to be today until the development of the research university. So your identity, my identity as a disciplinary exit is because of this transformation. So what does this mean for instructors like us or y'all of pre-designed online courses? One thing it reveals is that our feelings of loss are based in historical fact. The majority of full-time VSU faculty were trained at research universities, which mean we've been disciplined to be specialized, to be an expert and arbiter of knowledge. We think of ourselves this way. As a result, when we teach a course, that we did not design, there's a loss of identity because we're no longer the sole arbiter of that disciplinary knowledge, right? So when I hear from faculty that they get assigned to teach an ACA course and they're concerned that they can't change the content or that they did not design the content, it's because of this identity of a faculty member as a disciplinary expert, right? Indeed, another subject matter expert in our discipline built the course with an instructional designer, but the instructor, you, me, is no longer the primary delivery person of content. So like I said, when teaching an ACA or Smart Path course, we can't change the content. There is an actual loss of something we used to always do at VSU and which we were formed as faculty, as disciplinary scholars to be. Reading this history and coming to this realization, how this is larger context for our feelings blew my mind. What do y'all think? Did you already know this history? What else might this history mean for instructors of pre-designed online courses at VSU? So I want to ask you that question right now to have you think and ponder out loud before I move into some answers. What about this history? Does this put into context your feelings that you shared in the poll? Please go ahead and unmute yourselves.
I think it makes sense, you know, that we're incorporating more, you know, outside resources because it's their availability, you know, like, you know, videos or other things that, you know, you do get a sense that, you know, there's a shift from, you know, I'm the person that you need to talk to get the information to, no, look over here. They're saying it actually better than I could, you know, or they've created a better website than I could, or, you know, that conveys more meaning and more message. So I'm just going to point you here. I'm going to point you there. And it gets back to what you were saying about, you know, we become researchers then. We're become researchers, I guess, for the student. You know, this is where you need to go to get the information.
Mm-hmm.
So in some ways, I guess we are being the arbiter, but also, you know, co-opting it to somebody else too.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah. Okay, Charles, you're getting into a word that I'll share in a bit, but yes. Thank you for sharing that. So it's even kind of changing your idea of like, okay, so all this research, all this knowledge exists elsewhere. So my role now is to maybe help the students sort through it, right? And to kind of understand it. I heard you kind of saying that, even if you didn't say it exactly.
Right. No, I think that's right. I think that's right.
Yeah. What about Hu Ting or Shay or Kristen or Joel? How does this history put into context maybe some of your feelings?
Or it just reminds me that like this is why higher ed is shutting down, right? Like why all these universities are closing, and eventually there's going to be very few. And so like I've taught online since 2009, so I've been doing it for a long time, not completely online, but for a long time. So I just think it's, you know, like higher ed's going to have to recognize that we're going to have to make major changes. Like we're transforming, but we transform very slowly. If we don't start transforming faster, we're not going to exist, or very few. That's why kids aren't going to college. They can get the training elsewhere. And not have to go 4 years. So.
Good. Yeah, Kristen, I appreciate the dark side that you're really sharing there, but that's true. We fundamentally have to kind of shift our mindsets in what the faculty member does. I don't think we're obsolete, and that's what the rest of this webinar is going to be about, right? What can we do? What is the role of the faculty member? And I don't think you're fully saying that, Kristen, but you are saying if we don't shift the role with this transformation, then that will impact, right, our roles. Shay, I saw you nodding a bit there when I said, I don't think we're obsolete, right? Or maybe it was Hu Ting, but.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about the issue of the instructor's responsibility, the feeling of responsibility. If I'm the major designer of the whole course, I will feel more like I should be responsible for the quality of the course and the teaching of the course. But if I'm not the actor of the course designer, I will a little bit, feel like less responsible. I'm not sure whether this is a similar feeling among all faculty members. Sometimes I will push myself more to, enhance my feeling of responsibility. Even though I'm not the designer of the content of the course, I will still, try my best to be responsible for the teaching quality and the course quality, especially for online course. And the other thing is that I noticed that in our SOI's student opinion of instruction survey, even though the instructor is not the designer of the course, they still, survey the students about their opinions about the course content, how the course improve your knowledge and something like that. But it's a little bit, strange for me because we have no right to change the content, but still we are, assessed by the students regarding the content.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit strange to me.
Yeah, I want to jump in real quick because I want to make sure we move on, but you pointed out two really good things. What is our responsibility as a faculty member if we didn't design the course, but we're still teaching it? I want to point out the root of that word, response. Okay, keep that in mind because of what I'm going to tell you the research says. Mm-hmm. Response, okay? And then the second thing I think you pointed out, we said some great things was, our SOIs are going to need to, and that's something we should bring up with the faculty senate, are going to need to change some questions when you haven't designed the course. So that's a really, really, really good point. But I'm going to move us on because you guys are really thinking deeply and hitting exactly what I hoped this webinar would, which is given this transformation, what is our role? What is our responsibility? There is a role for us, a very important role for us. And I know some of you are already doing this, but I'm going to now tell you kind of what the research says. Okay. So what is the role of faculty then with this newest transformation where we are an instructor of a pre-designed online course? We're no longer the primary delivery person of the content, but we're still very important as a facilitator of learning online. To do that, a bulk of research says we must establish instructor presence online. Okay, and this is a term, I know Huting's more in the world of higher ed or administrative higher ed or online learning, but this is a key concept that has risen in the research on teaching online, instructor presence. And the terms instructor presence, teaching presence, and even social presence often get used synonymously in the literature. So I culled through a fair amount of it, and I kind of on the left put together 3 different definitions of what in generally is thought of as instructor presence online, but it often gets lumped in with the teaching presence and social presence. Okay, so see these definitions: specific actions taken by an instructor that project their self as a real person. So if we put Huting's question in mind, okay, one responsibility is we got to do something about that we're real, right? We're not a bot, right? We're not just an AI bot teaching this course. Okay, keep that in mind. This notion of being there, this communicating and interacting with students so that there's a connection. The students feel connected with you. Like Huting said, they could feel connected to the course even if you didn't design it, and even their peers. And then I really like this last definition where they say instructor presence online is where teachers facilitate the flow of the course and content through instructional design. So that would not be if you are a pre-designed course, because your SME did that, but interacting with students and communication. A common thread in those definitions is interaction and communication and some sense of what makes us real, right? What makes us human. But notice that instructional design is included in a definition too, like I mentioned. Now, since y'all didn't design your courses, I'm not going to focus on instructional design strategies for instructor presence online, but keep in mind the research says that we can establish instructor presence through instructional design, and our QM standards attempt to do that. So I'm not going to focus on those today with you guys because you're not the designers of your course, but just I want you to know in the scholarship they say that is possible. We're going to focus on those other parts, communication, interaction, and I really love Houtine's notion, responsibility, responding, right? What does the research say we can do and should do then to have instructor presence online in a pre-designed online course? And there are a lot of benefits. One, because it increases the retention and student success of students in your courses. So they'll more likely just stay in the online course and they'll more likely academically achieve the outcomes. They will feel less isolated and more connected to a community of inquiry. And the third benefit is so important. You are impacted by that too, right? You're impacted by the lack of presence or the existence of presence online. So the research shows faculty will feel more connected and more engaged in the course if they also establish their instructor presence online. Does that make sense? So like, right? And you know this, you felt more detached. Some of you wrote that word detached in an online course. The strategies I'm going to teach y'all today are good for students and they're good for you. They will make you feel more connected and attached to the course that you did not design. So Houtine, again, I love what you said. You were like, I didn't design this. So what I'm teaching y'all today will be how to make you feel more connected to the course as well. Okay. So what are those? This is now where we get into the actual takeaway. So I have a list here, and I know this is a little small. You can zoom in on your screen. Actually, you should be able to kind of zoom in on your screen. I have a list here, and we're going to spend a lot of time talking through them, of 9 different facilitation strategies for instructor presence online. But before we go through these, I just want to note here that I'm emphasizing the word facilitator today because it's appearing in the research. And if you notice, these 2 quotes talk about the word facilitator when faculty become assigned to a course they didn't design. Okay, facilitator. So that goes back to Charles earlier. When Charles, you said, you were like, when I asked the feelings questions and you were like talking about resources, you were kind of jumping around words for yourself. I would say a facilitator, and this research is showing becomes much of our role now as teachers of these pre-designed online courses. So before we go into all these different strategies, and we're going to apply them to your courses today, I have a little test prediction for you guys. So scholars who study teaching have surveyed students and assessed courses for how effective these strategies are, like which of these strategies students learn from the most. So I'm going to show on the next slide how they rank, right? So like which are the most effective for students and which are the least. I'm going to ask you to predict right now. So if everyone in the chat can predict what you think are the top 3 versus what you think are the bottom 3 for which students learn from the most. Okay, and I know we haven't gone over them yet, but just given the initial definitions here.
So are we like numbering them from 1 to, like versus writing them in the chat?
Just, write in the chat, just say top 3. If you want to talk about colors, you could say prompt instructor, just give a quick little description. Yeah, because they don't have numbers on them, so.
Right, that's what I was saying. Could we just number from the top and count down and?
Sure, if that works for you, you just say that's the pattern you're using. Yeah. So which you think are the top 3 that students learn from the most, and then which are the bottom 3 that they, I guess, learn from the least. And we'll just wait till everyone adds in the chat. and then we'll see what people are thinking. So Joel, I'm assuming your first there list are the top three. Okay, the top three. Instructor response to questions, feedback on assignments, sending announcements. That's what Joel thinks. So then say the bottom when you type your bottom, Joel. And it's okay, you're taking your time. You guys are thinking, this is good. I will show you on the next slide who is right? And then that's how we're gonna. So, Charles, you put engagement, but which, oh, you mean engage in discussion forums, Charles? You really want to look at the list here because we're going to be very specific. So,
okay, let me read it again.
Sorry, go ahead. So when you wrote engagement, Charles, do you mean the one about discussion forums?
No, not that one really. I thought I saw another one. Let me look through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These are very specific strategies from the research, and that's why we're going to end up applying these. Yeah. So there is one on making course requirements clear, so I assume that's the one. And then there is one about multimedia content. So Joel is saying sync it. Got it. I see yours, Shay, now. Interesting. We've got some. Okay, so I'm going to do a quick kind of synthesis. Looks like in the top three, a lot of you put like the instructor response, prompt instructor response. I see that a lot in most people's top three. I see, I'm trying to think, I see timely feedback, I would say, in a number of your top threes. In bottom, I see the interactive syllabus. I see synchronous tools. So a couple of you, well, that's interesting. Some of you put synchronous tools in the bottom and then some of you put it in the top. Okay. Okay. Well, let's get in now to what the results are and then we'll go through each of these strategies. Okay. So I want to tell you, Joel, if this were an actual quiz, you'd be close to an A, almost an A+. I'm impressed because when I tested myself at this ahead of time, woof. Okay, so here are the results. Let me pull up my thing. I want to explain how I'm showing the results to you. So the smiley faces are the top 4. Okay, I know I had you guys only do top 3. The smiley faces are the top 4. The checks, the blue checks are good. Like a number of students are, in the research, like they were effective and students have learned from them the most. And then the X's are the ones that not only were less effective. Now, again, these are all strategies for instructor presence and facilitating, but the X's were less effective, and even more in the research with the students said they didn't really need them as much. Like they didn't appreciate them as much, if that tells you. So how did your prediction compare to the research? What surprises you? I'm going to call on Shay. Because Shay had some in her top that are in the bottom.
Yeah, I'm laughing because it's interesting. And again, I don't know the demographics of the students, but my experience with the students I've interacted with is why I put what I put. And so a lot of times,
Interesting.
They really appreciate the one-on-one if you can get them to respond and actually engage. And so we don't really know the level of engagement of the students either. But I mean, in terms of the ones that I put in the bottom three, it almost seemed, I got the impression like they tuned out the regular announcements, like they knew they were coming. So it really wasn't as effective in feeling engaged because they felt like, oh, well, this is on a timer type thing. And then in terms of the discussion forums, oftentimes I get the impression that my presence kind of roused them a little bit. The less that, I mean, so I try to respond either right at the beginning or close to the end, and not directly to a student as much as about in general to encourage conversation. And I found that to be more effective because if I respond directly, oftentimes it seems to derail the whole discussion.
Interesting.
So
the reason I pointed out Shay, and you know, Shay and I are friends, is that Shay's answer was the complete opposite of the research. Which you're right, research is always going to do a certain demographic, but I do want to tell you, I culled from national studies, and these were results from multiple studies. So I have the sources at the end. Multiple, like multiple studies kind of said this. So we'll always have outliers, we'll always have a different demographic. But what I want y'all to drive home is that you should, in teaching a pre-designed online course, you should at least be doing, at least according to the research and all these studies, the smiley faces and the checks, at least the smiley faces. And if you're going to invest your time, invest them in those and not the X's, you know? And that's kind of one of the takeaways I wanted from this, which is that faculty can spend a lot of time even creating their own intro bio video, or now you guys wouldn't do the syllabus with your pre-designed course, but, or trying to have, video conference possibilities. And this research is basically saying, redirect your energy to the smiley face strategies, right? So Joel, I don't know if I see you ready to chat, but do you mind sharing, because you got it right. Do you mind sharing some examples of each of those top three that you did, like how you do those? So like prompt instructor response or timely feedback on assignments, in discussion forums, or, regular announcements, since you had announcements and Kristen did too.
Sure. So, okay. So one thing, the feedback on assignments, and it kind of combines several of them. So when they turn in an assignment, I try to get it, especially for the online students. I try to get their feedback within sometimes the next day, but maybe a few days, depending on how large the assignment is and how many classes I have. And then as soon as I'm finished responding to their rough drafts or essays, whatever it is, I'll send them an email letting them know, hey, I'm done with your papers, look here to see the comments, to see the feedback. And sometimes too, depending on the assignment, I'll make a video where I'm kind of reviewing the criteria, and maybe I might have emailed a student, hey, can I use your paper in a sample video? And so I'll kind of show them a really good, like an A-level kind of example. So I try to give them prompt feedback, explain the feedback, send them an announcement or an email letting them know the feedback exists and why it is what it is. Those are just some of the things that I try to do. Probably sometimes I worry that like Shay said, sometimes the students might tune things out. I do worry sometimes I might overdo it a little bit. I probably send them at least 2 or 3 emails every week, depending on what's going on, maybe even once a day if there's a lot of assignments due. But yeah.
So I want to single out certain things you mentioned, because I want y'all to hear from this webinar, oh, of course we have to do timely feedback. Oh, of course we have to do announcements. But I've been very specific here in the slide with strategies some of you may have not tried before, okay? And one of them Joel brought up was sending audio or video feedback when you're grading. That was singled out in the research as a very effective and appreciated form of feedback from students. So now these aren't, you know, beautiful, perfect audios, right? I'm sure, Joel, you just literally turn on the record on your computer and just talk through it, right? Like, we're not talking, you got to go to the new media center or anything. So I want to mention that to you, that the timely instructor feedback assignment, whether formative or summative, can happen in creative ways, whether with the audio feedback or discussion forums or announcements. So even an announcement, you could give feedback to the whole class on the strengths and the areas for improvement of the assignment that everyone completed. Of course, you can't be personal in that, you know, you want to reveal grades. So keep that in mind. If some of you are already doing timely feedback, keep in mind that I've put the specific strategies within that. Have you ever tried it in an announcement? Have you ever tried it with audio or video? That's what the research, perfect.
Joel,
yeah,
do you send your emails through BlazeView or through VSU email? I do the same thing you do, and I send it through BlazeView. But you know, like half the time, I mean, I get some responses, but it's a lot of crickets. And so I'm curious, if you're sending it through VSU email, do you see a difference versus BlazeView?
So I email, honestly, I mostly use VSU email. I don't use BlazeView email too much unless a student emails me through BlazeView, then I'll respond in BlazeView. But I will put BlazeView announcements. Like if I send a class-wide email out, a lot of times I will post this, copy and paste it into the announcements also. But it definitely, to me at least, seems like they respond more to the VSU email versus the BlazeView email, just strictly email speaking.
Mm-hmm. Good question, Kristen. And I want to focus on the announcement thing, because when I've talked to faculty who teach online, a lot of them say pre-designed courses. So again, this is something that you can design into your course, right? When you get an ACA course, the announcements aren't always pre-designed. That's where you have control, a lot of control. And so like Joel said, you can send announcements that are about grades. I mean, not the personal name, but look at what I have in this list. This is you can send additional content, references to new content and announcements. So again, when I've been talking with ACA faculty who say, oh, I can't add content to this course. Yes, you can actually. You can.
Chelsea, I've been directly told by Marcia and Britt that I could not do that for 2 different classes. Like when I posted and said, like for my research class, it's a very huge paper they write. There's not a lot of extra resources in the content, I feel like. I mean, there's some, but I feel like there's some other ones I have that are better or more clear or just a different way. And so like I used to post them in the announcement and say, here's this to help with this. Here's this tip. Here's a link to this. And I was specifically told like to remove those. So
okay, well, let me circle back with Marcia and Britt, because it is a best practice for the announcements for I mean, just like anything, you don't want to overwhelm students with too much content, but if you were, for instance, responding to like an assignment, giving them feedback on an assignment, and you were like, here's an additional, like you're saying, source that it's not required, right? None of this is required. Then
that's what it was me doing. Like I was doing it before the assignment, basically like a tip. Here's a tip, like, you know, the directions say this. If you're struggling with that section, here's a link to another resource that would help you with that. And they all kind of took that as like, they both like felt like, even though yes, it was additional resource and I wasn't giving them a different directions, but that because the approach that content had to like getting to the final, you know, end of the paper was a little bit different, that it was changing the directions. And so they made me remove it.
So it can't change the assignment.
Well, it's not, it wasn't changing the directions. Like, it's just like, there's 5 ways to write a methodology for a research paper, right? Like, and all of them are correct. It's just like people go about it a little bit different way. Like when you read a research article, right? Like not everyone's cookie cutter the same. So I guess I would just want to like CELT will send out very specific, like, here's what's allowed, here's what's not, some examples of good and bad. Because like I said, I felt like exactly what you're saying I was doing, sharing additional resources, and I was told to remove that.
Okay, I'll circle back on that, but the content, I should clarify, should be supplementary, not, you know, in contradiction to the other content. So, but I'll follow up with that for you. And similarly, the announcements can have motivational messages or reminders, or even important, connect to the learning outcomes. So actually, Kristen, this is what I would do if I were you. If you wanted to add an additional resource, connect it to a learning outcome in the assessment, right? So say this additional resource could help you achieve this part of the assessment learning outcome, right? So that makes your resource in alignment with the assessment. So again, it's not a way to add more content or a different direction of the course, but to you know, give feedback, to motivate, to help do summary wrap-ups, you know, after a module is done, things like that. So, but yeah, we can follow up about that. The other thing I want to point out here on is the smiley face about making course requirements clear. So a lot of you kind of noted the clarity, even Charles, you had that up front. And the courses being designed how they are, you know, should be designed with a lot of clarity, but you can continue to make those connections and clarity for students in your announcements, or what the best practice is called an orientation video to the course. So again, that would be something that you post in an announcement or you post in a discussion forum. It's not the pre-built kind of module overview, but if you felt like, again, an assignment instruction needed more clarity or something, the research says having an orientation video can help. So I didn't know if anyone had ever done that before. Hu Ting or Charles or Shay or Kristen, any of you guys ever done that?
No, I haven't done that, but I think it's a good idea. I will try next time. Yeah, because when I like ask the students to review the syllabus carefully, it is common that some students will send me email regarding some issues or the concerns and or questions about the syllabus. So I think it's a good idea, yeah, to make a orientation video.
Yeah, if you created a quick little video about that and posted it in your announcement or the discussions, yeah, that would be great. One more thing I want to point out, and then I want us to now get to the application, the discussion forums. So Shay had an interesting reaction, which was like, I feel like the students didn't want me in there, that I derailed the conversation. It's very similar to being in a face-to-face course, right? It's a careful balance of being a facilitator of conversation and not, right, you know, ending the conversation. So I really appreciated in the research that they said, some of the things we can do if we enter the discussion forums, which was shown to be effective, and students were kind of, you know, on the fence about it being, it wasn't their worst thing that they didn't like, but is probing for higher orders of thinking, right? Or synthesizing a few posts. So 3 students make a post and then you synthesize, like, you know, a key point that all 3 of them pointed out about. Or you hit, you know, okay, good job, you know, defining this concept. How would you apply this concept to a courtroom, right? You know, Shay, you would know that as a probe for a higher order of thinking. And then the other thing that the literature talked a lot about, remember, this is about instructor present, was tagging student names. So I don't know if you guys know, but in BlazeView, you can do the tag. Have any of you ever tried that in the discussion forums? Just like I'm going to tag Joel right now here in the chat, you can do that in BlazeView discussion forums. Just do the little @tag. The research showed specifically that tagging the student pulls them back into the discussion, right? They don't just sign into, like, it just like tagging does for us in other chat forums. So so that's another kind of strategy you could try. Okay, so here's what I want us to do. We went a little longer for that, but this is really important. There was a worksheet that I sent y'all ahead of time, and I'm gonna pull up, if you could pull that up, it's in your OneDrive. And let's see, I have so many windows open. Here it is. I'm gonna try to share it again in the chat, but I see actually, I think you're all in there, except for Charles. So Charles, I'll link to it one more time in the chat, but everyone else is in it. So what you guys are tasked with right now is, see, I put your name in there. I'd like you to identify a course that is pre-designed that you're assigned to teach, maybe in the spring. And then now, based on what you learned today, I want you to indicate what strategy are you going to stop doing. And I know that's important for you to determine, like, one, maybe you're going to lay off a bit and no longer spend as much time, versus then talk more specifically about what strategy did you learn today that you want to start. Sorry, I'm tacking between so many documents. And specifically how, based on the research that we reviewed today. Okay. So I see, perfect. I see Kristen, I see Joel and Huting writing right now. And Charles and Shay, are you okay getting in? I see Charles in there now. So look at our list here. Which strategy are you going to stop, or at least not push as much? And which are you going to redirect your energy, right? Again, redirect. Now, Joel, I'm kind of wanting you to use what we learned today. So we learned today that actually using a synchronous video tool wouldn't be the best use of your time. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but I'm kind of wanting you guys to apply what you just learned today. So, does that make sense, Joel? Did we lose you? Oh, you're muted, Joel.
Yeah, no, just the stopping one is tricky because I don't really push any of the ones that were X'd out. So I don't know what I'm supposed to put for stopping.
Joel, I felt the same way. I was like, what do I stop? Because I don't do the things that are X'd out. So
well, and I'm also trying to like protect y'all's time. So that's okay. If you don't want to put anything in stop, that's fine. I'm trying to redirect your energy towards the
well, I think what he was saying is that the X's, like, we don't do that. Like, I don't focus any time where the X's were already. And that's what Joel was saying. So like, how do we stop something? I mean, all the other options, if we stop it, then it's like a smiley face or something that we should be doing. I guess we could do, are you saying like do less of the check marks?
Yeah,
less time on that.
Yeah. And Joel, can you your start though should be based in what we learned from the research today. I know you were just in that other workshop with Brian. So the video, what do you mean? Do you mean using audio video feedback? That's kind of what I'm wondering.
I mean, I already do all that stuff. Okay, what's something that's on here that I don't do?
So Charles, same with you. So, okay, so let me clarify the instructions. The instructions for this worksheet are to apply what we just learned. So Charles, you just put more interaction video with students, but we just learned that that is not going to be as effective. So get very specific with the strategy, right? What did we just learn was a specific strategy that the research says will be most likely to help students learn in a pre-designed online course for establishing instructor presence.
I'm trying to see where I can see the list again.
I don't know what you want from me. Oh, sorry.
So it should be, let me see if I can show it. It should be right in front of you, Charles. It's on the screen in front of us. So if you get back to the screen with all of us in it. So, you know, like when we ask students to apply what they learned, that's what I'm doing with this worksheet. Cool, Kristen, cool, awesome. Yep. Awesome. Awesome. And Shay, in your section on strategy to do, what if you put that multimedia content in your announcements or in the discussion forum response to your students? I'm just giving you another idea, right? What I love about using these OneDrive and Google Docs collaboration is you guys now get to see each other's strategies and ideas, you know. Awesome, Joel, good, that's a good one. Yeah. Yeah. Let's see, Hooting, just okay, connecting, synthesizing students, tagging student audio feedback to assignments. Awesome, Hooting. Okay. Okay. So Charles, did you lose the worksheet? I think it may have lost you. Maybe we lost him. Okay, well, here's what I was hoping now. I encourage you to save and download that worksheet. Because now you have examples from your peers and yourself to hold to try. And then you can also, I think, download the I think you guys can download my PowerPoint. Is it letting you download it? Let's see. This is me still trying to figure out Teams. Does it let you anywhere, Shay, to download the PowerPoint?
I'm checking now. I'm trying to see.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks y'all's patience with me still figuring out Teams. If not, I will send it after we're done, because I know you guys want to see these specific strategies. Here's what I want to end though with. We started with our feelings, right? About feeling disconnected or distant, frustrated, not good about these pre-designed online courses. How are you feeling now about facilitating a pre-designed on course? Maybe post your emoji in the chat. You know, if you've never done an emoji in Teams, if you look down, there should be a little smiley face in your chat bar. And then I'd love if a couple of you can share. And it's okay if your feelings haven't changed, because like I said, this is a transformation that we're all going through. But I'd love to kind of see. Kristen! Wow, got the what's that called? Like the bullhorn or?
It's like rocking, you know, like how you rock it, like that we can all rock this like spring semester. Yeah.
Yeah. So explain that a bit.
Just like, I mean, I guess I'm like, I don't know, reinforce that like the things I've been doing are like what you're saying to do. And the only thing I do, like I do the like video conference chat, but that's because like we're required to hold office hours. And I find like the students, like Shay said, like if they'll join, it's great. And once they figure out how helpful it is. So I am surprised that they don't think they learn from that, but I'm thinking it's probably, I'd be curious what the actual question is that was asked of them. If it, you know, like when you join, is it, you know, like removing those not applicables, but so I guess I'm, you know, encouraged with that. And I guess I need to go back to doing more video, audio recordings. I send a lot of like pictures, and I don't know, like that's not really talked about in here, but like if you're not comfortable with video or just don't have time, like I send pictures of me and my husband or my dog or my flowers, my hummingbirds, like not once a week, probably every other week, but I literally send like an email about like what's going on in the course, and then I include like a personal section that's like, here's a recent video of or a picture of me or my family or literally like the yard or something, just anything that humanizes you. And then I just tell them like something that's going on, like the good, the bad, and the, ugly type thing. And that students really respond well to that.
So that was actually, and I should clarify, there's only so much I can bring up, but in the smiley face here at the bottom about sending regular announcements, and I had that phrase about motivational messages, they did talk about that. So that's what you're doing. You're kind of motivating them and personalizing yourself at the same time with those images. Yeah. So any way someone can do a motivational message, that's a great idea. And then, like we said, giving them additional content, but making sure it's not overwhelming or contradictory and more streamlined, connected to the course learning outcomes, or like you said, a wrap up from an assignment or something like that. So Joel and Shay and Hu Ting, like Joel, I see a little bit of you're kind of perplexed still, maybe. What can you describe your? I know we're right at time, but your emoticon.
Oh, yeah. No, sorry, I'm not trying to be negative. I'm teaching eCore for the first time in the spring, so I'm a little bit, uncertain of how that's going to go because I haven't seen the content yet, and I'm not sure. I'll have to experiment with some new video tools because I don't know if they'll have like Kaltura embedded in there or whatever, and we're not using Collaborate anymore, so I'll have to play with learning more about Teams. So I'm just a little bit unsure of some of that.
Yeah, and that's okay. I mean, it's hard. That's another challenge with a pre-designed online course, right? We didn't kind of get familiar with it for a whole semester or things like that. So that's okay. And then I would just say rely on those top strategies that you're already doing, right? The content will come. It's all these other strategies of responding to students, like we said, and giving good feedback and doing the announcements. That's gonna shore up, all of y'all. Oh, Charles, you're here. Yay. I thought we lost you for a second. Shay and Hu Ting, you sort of both have smileys, but also thumbs up. You want to explain something by the end of today that maybe changed from the beginning?
Yes, I think the strategies that you shared from the research are very helpful because it changed my mind and changed some of my original thoughts about this the effectiveness of these strategies. So yeah, it really provide very good suggestions for my future teaching. Yeah, so I think that is very helpful.
That's great. By the way, I just attached the wrong document, so ignore that one. I was trying to attach my PowerPoint for this, and I attached a different one. I'll attach my other PowerPoint. But Hu Ting, what I love is that you realize that the responsibility of a faculty member, still, there's a lot that you can do, and some of which you're already doing, and now you know more what you could do. So. That's great. Okay, I just attached my PowerPoint, the second one that says PowerPoint. I apologize. The first one was from the retreat. I'm in the middle of facilitating at the same time. Shay, you want to share a last kind of thoughts about how your feelings have changed, or?
Sure. Yeah, I can jump in. I think I echo. A lot of times I try to change things up based on student feedback, even though in my gut, I think that it's okay. So, I mean, the reason I put the cool glasses there was that I walk away feeling like, what I was thinking in terms of my gut was pretty close to the research. And while I want to be responsive to students' feedback, it's just a reminder of, sometimes you do have to, kind of like how I feel about group work. You kind of have to say to them, I hear you, but. And so that's why I walk away from this feeling a lot more settled, like what I'm doing is on target, but also encouraged to follow my thought. Like I've been trying to think about those videos for a while and asking would they really be useful. And research seems to be supporting that. So that's where I am.
Yeah. And it's interesting because it's these micro videos, but not the full lecture content videos. It's more like what Joel and Kristen were talking about. It's these more just giving them quick feedback, making an announcement, you know, they're gonna get the content micro videos, the heavier stuff from what's been designed in the course already. So, yeah.
Is there any, like, I know we're past, I don't know if anyone needs to go, but like, I know, you know, I put announcements out there and I know like a lot of them don't see them. Like they're not looking at the announcements. Is there anything that, like, I try to vary days of the week and times and stuff, and I put a different like meme in, you know, like that's either related to the content or something funny, like whatever, to try to draw them in. But like anything that, you know, you've seen that helps push them to it, or even if we do from the get-go that like helps them like to engage with those announcements?
I mean, I can look up more of the specific research on that. I mean, you were kind of hitting the nail on the head. It's just in our multimedia world, having some kind of visual or some tagline, and there is, you know, just like with good course design, there is research on consistency, right? A pattern to your announcements. So like some faculty will do, you know, like I do the CELT Tuesday teaching tips, right? So yours could be, you know, Friday weekly wrap up, you know, or something like that. So I think that's the balance to strike, is that not overwhelming with too many, but having a pattern. So if you establish a pattern, Kristen, then that pattern will work. You know what I mean? Okay. So I can look up, I'll ask Brian Fitzgerald, our training specialist, to look up a little more for you on that.
And it may be that like I'm doing everything, you know, I was just curious, like if there's something else, but yeah, I could try the pattern. Like I try to almost, I mean, I probably do too many, but it's like also like I don't want it to be like a long announcement, you know, because I teach stats and resource methods. Like they're very challenging courses. It's a lot of content. When like I teach a different course, like they're not having that many announcements, but I just feel like there's a lot that aren't, you know, aren't looking at them. Maybe they are, which we can't see, but it seems like they're not on some of the
yeah,
things that
and they may not, and that's, you know, there's only so much we can do as faculty, which is kind of why I was saying we need to stop some things, right? If they're just not going to work. But the announcements are, you know, I know just from personal experience, my students, even though I'm teaching a face-to-face class, they are watching their BlazeView announcements. They're more paying attention to those than some other things, because they have the apps that kind of ping them and stuff. So
okay, maybe they are looking at them.
Yeah.
And I just want to tell everybody, like, I don't know if you guys know this, but like some of you talked about adding announcements, you can copy those into the course from another semester. So like you don't have to, like, we are allowed to do that based on my conversations with Britt. Like that we can like, so if you create announcements, you can copy them from one semester or one section to another. That way you're not trying to recreate the wheel and then just go in and edit if you need to.
Yeah, there's settings.
Change dates.
Exactly. There's settings for announcements. You can, preset them for times to go out and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, using the settings. So that's a great strategy to share. Well, you guys have been a great group. I know we went over a little bit, but I really feel, thank you. I'm glad it was reassuring. Like I said, since I shared the PowerPoint in the chat, I would encourage you to download that. And then you can look up the research. I have a slide. Actually, I didn't show it to you, but it's right here at the end with the references and the research I was reading. So, you know, you can look that up. And yeah, this is a new role for all of us. So, but I think it's an important one. And download that document, the OneDrive document as well. Yep. So thank you, everyone. I'll sit back if you have any further questions. But otherwise, I happy teach facilitating your courses in the spring. So.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, Jen.